What if the person you trusted to protect you during your divorce was quietly benefiting from your pain? Most people walk into divorce thinking it's about fairness, about splitting things in half, keeping what's yours, and maybe somehow coming out of it with a little dignity left. But that's not how it works. Not in court, not with lawyers, and definitely not when emotions run high and the clock is ticking. See, there are things no one tells you when you're filing papers or sitting across from your ex in mediation. Little details that seem unimportant until they suddenly cost you your savings, your home, or even your kids. Divorce lawyers know these things. They've seen the same patterns play out over and over again. But instead of warning you, most just let you learn the hard way. And by the time you figure out what's really happening, it's too late to fix it. This isn't about some hidden conspiracy. It's not even about breaking the law. It's about a system that quietly rewards lawyers for dragging things out while punishing people who walk in thinking it's all going to be fair. In this video, we're going to uncover 5 things divorce lawyers don't want you to know until it's too late. These aren't guesses, they're hard truths, ones that real people only learn after they've lost too much. If you're thinking about divorce, in the middle of one, or even just curious how the system really works, keep watching, because what you're about to hear could save you from years of regret. Let's start with the first secret, and it's the one that explains everything else. Most people think hiring a divorce lawyer means hiring someone who's fully on your side, someone whose job is to protect you, fight for your best interests, and help you move on. But here's what no one tells you. Divorce lawyers make more money when your case drags on. The longer you fight, the more they bill. The more emotional chaos you're in, the easier it is to keep the clock running. Doesn't matter how much they smile in the consultation or how many diplomas are hanging behind them. The business model is simple. Conflict pays. And if you and your ex are on the edge of reaching an agreement, there's often very little incentive to push for peace quickly. Some lawyers will even subtly encourage you to stand your ground on small issues, not because they matter, but because they know it'll spark more paperwork, more meetings, than more billable hours. You'd be shocked how common this is. A client goes in with a pretty reasonable outcome on the table. The lawyer nods, listens, then says something like, "We can do better." It sounds supportive, it sounds protective, but what it often means is, let's keep this going. And when you're hurt, stressed, or angry, which most people are during divorce, it's easy to follow that lead. It feels like fighting back, like getting justice. But what it really is a detour, a long, expensive detour that benefits almost no one but the person billing you by the hour. This doesn't mean all lawyers are manipulative, but it does mean you need to remember one thing. You're paying them for their time, and the more of it they use, the more of your money they take. If your lawyer isn't actively encouraging settlement options or helping you stay focused on what truly matters, that's a red flag. In divorce, the biggest financial loss isn't always what you split with your ex. It's what slowly drains away while you think your lawyer is helping you win. Most people expect games from their ex's lawyer. They assume the other side will try to twist facts, hide assets, or paint a distorted version of the truth. But what they don't expect is that the same kind of strategy might be coming from their own team. What you have to understand is that in high emotion cases like divorce, some lawyers don't just play defense, they play you. They know when to hold back information, when to push your buttons, and when to let silence create panic. Why? Because the more emotionally dependent you are, the easier it is for them to stay in control. If they can keep you feeling like things are uncertain, risky, or explosive, they get to manage the fallout. And the longer that fallout lasts, the more you rely on them for every decision. It's subtle. You might notice them delaying updates, not sharing certain documents until the last minute, avoiding direct answers when you ask how close you are to being done. You tell yourself they're just being cautious or that things must be complicated behind the scenes, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're just managing the game in a way that benefits them more than it benefits you. And there's something else most people don't realize until it's too late. Lawyers talk. Even when they're on opposite sides, there's often a professional familiarity between them. And sometimes that unspoken relationship affects how aggressively your case is handled. What looks like legal strategy might actually be quiet coordination. Not collusion, not corruption, just convenience. Because the less tension between lawyers, the easier their jobs become, even if that means your outcome suffers. The hardest part, you won't see it happening unless you know what to look for. You'll assume your team is fighting for you. You'll assume silence means they're working. But silence can also mean strategy, just not the kind you benefit from. If your gut is telling you something's off, don't ignore it. Ask questions. Push for clarity. Because not every battle in divorce is fought across the table. Sometimes it's happening right beside you. People assume that custody battles are about figuring out who the better parent is, who loves the kids more, who can offer the most stability or affection. But that's not how courts think. Judges aren't looking for who cries harder or who tells the most emotional story. They're looking for patterns, documentation, calm, consistent behavior, and, most importantly, proof that you can handle pressure without falling apart. That's the part that catches people off guard. Because while you're sitting there trying to prove your love for your children, the court is watching how you handle conflict. Are you emotionally steady? Are you respectful even when it's hard? Do you show up prepared, or do you show up defensive, reactive, and scattered? These are the signals they pay attention to. And they matter far more than the words you say in court. Even things you think are harmless can backfire. Sending an angry text to your ex, venting on social media, showing up to a hearing frustrated and flustered because of something your ex did that morning. All of it can be used to paint a picture that says you're not stable. And when it comes to custody, stability is everything. The court isn't trying to reward the better parent, it's trying to avoid risk. That's it. They want the path of least resistance, the person who won't cause chaos 6 months down the road. There was a father who once had a rock-solid case involved in his kids' lives, no criminal record, steady income, good home. But one emotional outburst in the hallway, caught on a security camera, changed the judge's perception instantly. Didn't matter that he had been holding it together for weeks. That one moment became the image that stuck. And that's how custody battles are often decided, not by the truth, but by the impression you leave behind. If you think love alone will win you custody, you're not ready. Because in this game, it's not about how you feel, it's about what they can prove. And unless you understand how to stay calm, composed, and calculated, even when everything feels unfair, you risk losing more than just time with your kids. You risk losing the chance to be taken seriously at all. Most people assume that when a marriage ends, everything just gets split down the middle. Half the house, half the money, maybe some compromises here and there. But that's not how it works. Divorce is less like a clean break and more like a slow leak. And unless you know how the system works, you could end up handing over far more than you ever planned to. Here's what most people don't realize. The moment you move out of the house, you give up leverage. Judges start to see the other person as the one providing stability, especially if kids are involved. And that can affect more than just custody. It can shift how assets are divided, who gets to stay in the home, even how alimony is decided. Emotional decisions like walking away for peace or leaving to avoid conflict can cost you thousands later. You think you're doing the mature thing, but legally it can look like you gave up. Then there's the financial side most people overlook. Retirement accounts, stock options, real estate appreciation, business equity. These aren't just numbers, they're lifelines. And if you don't have a lawyer or financial advisor who's looking at the whole picture, things slip through the cracks. People forget to value pensions properly. They underestimate the long-term impact of giving up spousal support. They assume a buyout number today is close enough without realizing what they're actually walking away from. And it happens quietly. Nobody waves a red flag and says, you're getting screwed. It's small things. Signing something without understanding the long-term tax hit, agreeing to sell an asset too quickly, forgetting that a joint debt can still haunt you years after the divorce is final. All of it adds up. And by the time you figure it out, the ink is dry and there's no undo button. What makes it worse is the emotional fog you're in. When your heart is broken or your mind is fried from constant arguments, you just want it over. You want to sign, settle, and move on. And lawyers know that. Some will even lean into it. They'll tell you it's the best deal you're going to get, that dragging it out won't help, that peace is better than fairness. And sometimes they're right, but other times they're just trying to get it off their desk. If you're in the middle of a divorce or even just considering one, take this seriously. The decisions you make in the next few weeks could affect your next few decades. Don't rush, don't give in just to get it over with, because in divorce, giving up too much too fast is the most common regret people carry for the rest of their lives. When people hire a divorce lawyer, they usually think one thing matters most: how aggressive they are. They want someone who won't back down, someone who fights hard or never loses, so they pick the loudest voice in the room, the one with flashy marketing, bold promises, and an office full of framed verdicts. But here's what they learn later. Usually, when it's too late, the lawyer who talks the most doesn't always care the most. Most people don't choose a lawyer the way they'd choose a surgeon or a financial planner. They choose based on emotion. They're hurt, scared, exhausted, and they're drawn to the person who sounds the most confident. But confidence is easy to fake, and just because a lawyer can talk a big game doesn't mean they'll treat your case like a priority. In fact, many of the most in-demand lawyers are juggling dozens of clients at once. And if your case isn't dramatic or high-paying enough, it quietly gets pushed to the bottom of the pile. You'll start to notice it in small ways. Emails that take too long to get a reply, deadlines that pass without explanation, confusion over details you've already explained 3 times. You'll be told they're busy or that it's part of the process. But what's really happening is simple: you're not a priority, you're a paycheck. And by the time you realize it, the damage is done. Agreements have been signed, court dates have passed, and the window to fix it has closed. You won't get an apology. You won't get that time or money back. You'll just be another name in a file cabinet of people who trusted the wrong person. The truth is, the best divorce lawyers aren't always the ones who shout the loudest. They're the ones who listen, the ones who keep you informed, who explain things clearly, who return your calls without excuses, and who actually care about how this affects your life, not just their reputation. If you're still early in the process, ask yourself a hard question. Did I hire the lawyer I need or the one who made me feel better in the moment? Because in divorce, comfort can be expensive, and the wrong choice can cost you far more than legal fees. Divorce doesn't just end a marriage, it exposes everything you didn't know you were vulnerable to. The legal system doesn't move on emotion, it moves on paperwork, pressure, and silence. And if you walk into it thinking it's about fairness, you're going to leave feeling blindsided. Not because you made a huge mistake in court, but because you didn't see the quiet ones happening outside of it. The conversations you weren't part of, the delays that cost you time, the compromises you made without realizing what you were giving up. The truth is, most people don't regret getting divorced. They regret how they handled it. They regret not asking more questions, not seeing the signs, not realizing that the person they hired to fight for them might have been more focused on their own calendar than on their client's future. These 5 secrets aren't rare. They happen every single day in courtrooms, in conference calls, in the quiet spaces between legal filings and broken promises. If you're watching this because you're thinking about divorce, don't panic. Just pause. Slow down. Don't rush to hire the loudest lawyer or sign the first deal that looks like peace. Take a breath and ask yourself, who benefits if I move quickly? Who gets paid more if I keep fighting? Who loses if I stay silent? Because the people who walk out of divorce stronger aren't the ones who fought hardest. They're the ones who understood the game. The ones who stayed calm, asked the right questions, and made choices with their future in mind, not just their feelings in the moment. If even one of these truths surprised you, let me know in the comments. Share your story or your questions, because you're not alone. And if you haven't already, subscribe so you don't miss the next video. We're here to help you think smarter, act stronger, and protect what matters most before it's too late.